So, another exciting share about the Dalet Edim Asiyah, the four worlds. Again, based on this letter of Frierdiker Rebbe from the fourth volume of his collected responsa. There's collected letters, and there's also this nice Chasidic Heritage Series English translation. Good on the market. They even have an ebook, if I'm not mistaken. So anyhow, without any further ado, let's get right into it. So this year is a continuation, really, very directly from the last year. Even though everything over here, all of these shurim, are supposed to be one after the other, it's supposed to be a series, a sequence, just going in order. But particularly this year is very deeply connected to what we discussed last year. And I think to that end, it's very important to give at least a very brief recap of where we left off last year. So in last year, we were trying to explain the nature of the world of Atzilus. Because the world of Atzilus is really extremely spiritual. And we were trying to explain just how spiritual it is. And to that end, we gave two parables. We said, on one hand, or one kind of parable that we can give, is that Atzilus is like taking a flame out of a coal. That is to say, that inside of a coal, there's a lot of heat. There's fire, there's whatever you want to call it. It's hard to call it a fire because it's not fire the way that we appreciate it, but it is essentially just the main crux of what fire is. It is the heat, it is the reaction, everything, it's the origin of fire, if you will. And then sometimes you move the coal, something happens to it, a burst of oxygen, and suddenly there's a flame. The flame is a revelation of what's going on inside of the coal. The reaction that's going on inside of the coal that we can't perceive, we can't appreciate, because it's just taking place in a medium that's too thick for us to pass through, too thick for us to see into. The flame comes out, and then suddenly we're able to see the fire, we're able to appreciate it, but it's the same essence of what was going on inside of the coal. There's nothing new with the flame, besides for the fact that now with this flame, we're able to see what we weren't able to previously see. But there's nothing new in the essence of the flame. The flame existed inside of the coal. The only difference is that now it's revealed. The nimshal, the moral of the story, I guess, from that is that you have a great deal of spirituality. There are many worlds that exist above Atzilus. What makes Atzilus new and unique and special is the fact that we took all of these things, which until that point were impermeable. We weren't able to reach them in any way. And we revealed them. Atzilus is a world which, in a sense, is a revelation of what was concealed before. It's nothing new. Hashem didn't create spirituality for Atzilus. Spirituality existed well before Atzilus. Atzilus is a revelation of that spirituality. So that's one parable that we gave for Atzilus. Another parable that we gave for Atzilus is the parable of lighting one candle from another. So we said that when you light a candle, you don't subtract some of the flame from one candle and add it on to the next. Flame is flame. It exists regardless of what candle it is latched onto. But sometimes flames burn in different ways. You could have a very coarse, unrefined candle, and a candle, animal fat is the example. Probably the closest example we'll find is those scented candles that have, I don't even know the name of the chemical that they use for it. It burns a very dark smoke. It leaves a lot of soot. So that's a very unrefined candle. Then you have another candle which is much more refined, the candle of olive oil perhaps, where the flame burns very purely. There's no soot, there's no smoke. It's a very straight and direct flame. It just goes straight up. The flame is the same. You could light one candle from another candle and not change the original candle whatsoever. But at the same time, you have a new flame. It's a new light, and it behaves in a different way. It could be flickering. It could give off soot. Whatever it is, the flame stays the same. The candle, the means of expression, the means by which the flame is being expressed could change, and that could have some kind of effect on the way that the flame behaves. But it's not that the flame itself is different. It's the same flame, and also that we're able to take from one flame, give it to another flame, without there being any change. So those are the two parables that we gave in the last year. So we have, I think, an ambitious amount of Teichen to cover, not too much more than last time. That by Teichen I mean of the text of the Frierdiker Rebbe. But it's really going to be mainly just discussion based on the text, not too many diyokim, although we have a few. Anyhow, without further ado, let's just get right into the text itself. So the Frierdiker Rebbe says we're going to give a whole other realm of example. He says, we could further understand Atzilus with the power of intellect. Not to say that we could use our minds per se, but we can give an example for Atzilus from our own intellect. It says in Eiv, we're going to be quoting a little bit of Eiv in this. It says in Eiv, that from my flesh I can perceive godliness. And we take this to a very big extreme in Chassidus by saying that the way that we function, we can appreciate a lot about the way that divinity and spirituality functions. But anyhow, the Haskalah Haba the Adam, when an idea comes to a person, it is forced to say that there is some place from which the idea comes to a person. Before the person has the idea doesn't exist by that person. As it says in Eiv, that wisdom comes from nothing. In the way that it's phrased in the context in Eiv, it might be understood to be asking a question of where does Chochmah come from? A question that Eiv is asking. But the way that it's phrased and understood in Chassidus is that it's a statement that Chochmah comes from nothing. Not where does it come from. Chochmah comes from the where. It comes from the place of nothing. This is the difference between having a new idea and having an understanding. The Bevina, with understanding, before a person understands and grasps the idea, there needs to be the base idea. The thing that you are understanding needs to already exist. And then you can mull it over, you can think about it a lot, you can try to reach the depths of the idea, but ultimately you need to have an idea that you're working with first. This is not so with the pure essence of wisdom. Before you're able to think the idea, the idea just doesn't exist. When a person is trying to think of a new idea, they're thinking, they don't know where they're reaching, they don't know any place to go for a new idea. You just gotta think, and then the idea it pops in. Suddenly there's an idea in your head. Where it came from, we don't know. If we knew where it came from, that would be the idea that came before that idea. As in, you have the idea that you're looking for, and then maybe you have an idea before that, and an idea before that. All of those lead into the idea that you're looking for. But ultimately, there's got to be some place where you say, I don't know where the idea came from. It just came. It just arose in my mind. So remember, this is an example for Atzilus. So we're getting there. This is one of the reasons for why having new ideas comes through hard work. People don't have new ideas. They're sitting around and then suddenly a new idea. They can maybe go from one idea to another, but over there they know where their idea is coming from. It's not a new idea, it's an expression of old ideas, maybe combined in a new way. But a new idea comes when a person has mental strain. The more that a person strains their brain and works with the power of their intellect, the more that they do this, the greater the wisdom that they'll achieve is. And the reason for this is the reason for this is because having new ideas is taking nothing, is taking a non-existence and making it into something. Reaching into a place where there is no idea, and to somehow take out of that, to squeeze out of that, a new idea. Now this is a confusing concept, and to this end, the Frierdiker Rebbe says, I'll give you another example to explain the example that we're working on right now. He says, He says the example for this is taking fire out of a flintstone. This happens particularly through hitting the flintstone, flint and steel. when we think about it, there's not actually a fire inside of a flintstone. We know this. We know that there's no fire hidden inside of a flintstone. And everyone knew this for the thousands of years that people have been making fires with flint and steel. But what it is that the flint contains within itself the potential for fire. It is a material which is suited for the creation of fire, of truly something from nothing. There is no fire that exists within the flint. If it would have fire, we would probably term it a coal. Coals are rocks, or lumps of mass, that contain a flame within themselves, even though it's not revealed. A flint is not that. A flint is not something that contains within itself fire. It merely contains the theoretical potential for fire. For all I know, there are an infinite such materials that exist that have some kind of potential for fire. I don't know that this is one of their potentials. It happens to be that with flint can do so many things. You can make, tiles out of flint. I don't know exactly what you would do with flint, but you could use it as paperweight. You can sell it in a gift shop, whatever you would want to do with flint. Flint happens to contain one of the infinite possibilities of what you could do with flint is that it contains the potential to easily create sparks of fire. It happens to be, we know about this, and we as humans have been using this for thousands of years. But it's not that there's a fire inside of the flint. It's that the flint has the potential for fire. And it's an important distinction from a coal, because a coal is something that it has a fire within it. And this is something that that the Frierdiker Rebbe is about to say. This is an important detail for also how you get the fire out of it. So, the adlokas ner miner, lighting one candle from another, for example, one of the examples we give for Atzilus. Hu alidei negia bilvad. You only need to touch a wick to another wick. Because the fire is already there, the fire is already revealed. There's an existence of fire that exists. An existence that exists. Yeah, go figure, tautology. But yeah, it's already there. Taking a fire out of a flintstone is particularly through hitting. The reason for this is because when you light a fire from another fire, the fire already exists. There is a flame on the other wick. When you touch one wick to a lit wick, you're taking a fire that's already there and you're spreading the fire. When you're trying to make one existence from another, it's very simple. You just touch one to the next. With a flintstone, whatever flame there is exists in a completely concealed existence. It comes from this non-existence. It's so concealed that it doesn't exist. The potential is not something that's inherent within the flint at all. So it exists in a state of non-existence. It exists beforehand. If you look at the line of time, every moment leading into the next, you see that there is that potential for flame in the flint, because I can actually hit the flint and a flame will come. It exists in potential within the flint, but that's such a distant thing that it's a non-existence. It comes from a non-existence to an existence. And that is why it comes particularly through hitting. And this, going back to the idea of chokhmah, of having a new idea, this is how we're supposed to understand the notion of having a new idea. That chokhmah comes from nothing. With the fact that wisdom and understanding, intellect, it comes from the source of wisdom. The way that it comes and the way that it's revealed is in a way of mitziyah. It's in a way of finding something. This is why we call mitziyos existence. It's called existence because it's something that's found. It's something which is available. The reason why we say this is because its source is a non-existence. And like, for example, someone that finds a lost object. Certainly the place that it is found is not its true place. When you have a lost object that you find it, when you find something, you can't say this is the place where it always was and it always should be, because otherwise it's not a chiddush. You didn't find something new. It was something that was there, was already apparent. Really came from another place. What is the origin of the thing that is found is impossible to know. Seeing as it comes from non-existence into an existence. So this is the example that we give for Chachma. Remember, this is all an example for Atzilus. Hopefully we'll do a summary at the end just to be able to keep a grasp on everything. But yeah, so wisdom is a novelty. It's something that's found. It's something that a person works in their mind, and then, bam, they have an idea. And where it comes from, they can't know the original source of the idea. Because if they knew the original source of the idea, it wouldn't be that they got a new idea. It would just be an expression of an old idea. It would be a new understanding, perhaps, a new way of configuring other ideas, but it wouldn't be a new idea. A new idea is that it came from a place, we don't know where it is, it's just you found it. You found it sitting there in your mind. Where it came from, we can't know. So that's a new idea. After all of this, seeing as this point of intellect comes as an intellectual point, this new existence, this new idea that exists in the mind is now an existence. It's something that is tangible. You're able to have a grasp on it. Especially so compared to what came before it, which we have no reference for. We don't know where it comes from. But at the same time, it's not properly in existence. Why? Sorry, the why was a little bit out of place. This is, therefore, this new point of intellect comes in a way of a flash. It comes in a way of concealment. It pops into your mind. It flashes in. Like a flash of thunder. I'll get to that after the paragraph there. Like a flash of thunder. Hamavrik kirega, that it flashes for a moment, and it's concealed. This is also how it is with the flashing of the point of intellect, that it flashes and then suddenly it's concealed. Which is a very annoying feature of having new ideas, by the way. That whenever you're trying to think of a new idea, you have that flash, and you suddenly I know the idea, I have the solution, whatever it is that you're trying to think of, and then it's not like suddenly you understand everything. You have the idea, and then you got to do something with it. It's not properly fleshed out, and then you need to sit there and you need to try to chain it. You need to try to give it an understanding, and then finally, then you'll be able to actually appreciate the idea. But it's not that when you have an idea, suddenly everything is understood with all of its details. Even though you can know that the idea contains within itself everything that you need, it's exactly what you were looking for. When you have a new idea, even though you're not properly understanding it, you know that is the idea that you were looking for. But it's not properly there. You need to flesh it out with an understanding before you could actually appreciate it. So the idea comes really as a flash. It's like a flash of lightning or a flash of thunder. Again, I'll get to that at the end of the paragraph there. So the reason for this is because even though the new idea does actually exist, its existence is only an existence compared to what came before, the thing that we couldn't see, the source that we can't reach. It is not a complete existence. So it kept on referencing the idea that we said, or the idea that the Frierdiker Rebbe noted, of a flash of thunder, which originally when you read it, you might be tempted to say that it's a typo. Usually you say Barak and Ram are the Hebrew words respectively for lightning and thunder. And they very often go together. And it's very tempting to say that what was meant was just the Barak, or Ram, thunder is usually something which is more prolonged. But, Maverick, Barak and Maverick is usually how we phrase Chachma. We usually term Chachma as a flash of lightning. But Barak Shal Ram is a very unfamiliar phrase. So I actually looked into the phrase. I think this phrase is very good for encapsulating what Atzilus is. But I did look for this phrase in other places, and I actually couldn't find it. But there's an idea that occurs when you actually look at the original source of this whole notion that we're saying, that I think really ties everything together beautifully. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes on this, in Rosh Hashem. So really, there's a whole other aspect to this, which I'll get to in Res Hashem if we have time. I don't know that we will, but we'll see if we will. The whole other idea that relates to this is the idea of seeing what is normally heard and hearing what is normally seen. But we'll put that to the side for now in Res Hashem. In Eiv, in chapter 28, there is kind of a soliloquy of Eiv expressing that he wants to know where intellect comes from. Because intellect is this very fascinating thing, and how can we as humans possibly appreciate it, and all of these things. And it's a poem. It's a poem reaching out for wisdom. So in this poem, one of the lines, the line that we're quoting over here, we're going to be quoting it quite a bit, is V'chochma mi'ayin timatzeh. Wisdom, where does it come from? And it's in the middle of the parak. It's after describing a bunch of other things, how accessible they are, as opposed to intellect. Intellect is something which is not so accessible. But we say, V'chochma mi'ayin timatzeh. Eiv says, V'chochma mi'ayin timatzeh. The source of chochma is nothing. And then he goes on, giving more descriptions of this phenomena. And then he says, says when he made for rain an establishment and a path for chaziz koles. So very typically it's understood chaziz just means clouds or something to that effect. But actually the Ralbag says that it refers to lightning. So over here you would have essentially the phrase that the Frierdiker Rebbe is using, the lightning of thunder. Koles typically refers to thunder, especially in this context where he's talking about rain and weather. So Hashem establishes a way for the flashes of thunder, the lightning of thunder. The Tzemach Tzedek, interestingly enough, actually makes this connection in a very random way in Maseches, in his Kiddushim on Maseches Sukkah in the 3rd chapter towards the beginning. He quotes the Radak in his Shirashim, and he says also that this phrase means lightning of thunder. And again, this is referring to the context, the concept that we're trying to understand ourselves over here. This is immediately coming after the phrase V'chochma mi'ayin timatzeh. It's in the same chapter, trying to describe the same phenomena. So what's going on over here? So something that we can appreciate in this is that thunder and lightning are actually very much the same phenomena. Lightning strikes and that causes a roll of thunder. It's not that particularly causes, but they have the same effect. You have ice that crashes into each other in clouds, and ultimately it causes a boom, and it causes lightning to strike. It causes a great shift in electrons, which causes a negative shift, or an inverse shift, I should say, in the ground, and ultimately that causes lightning. It's the same phenomenon. Both of them are the same thing, essentially. But lightning is something that we see, and lightning comes in a flash. And thunder is something which then rolls. It's something that it has an extended period of time, and it doesn't just happen instantaneously and then fade away. It'll go and it'll continue traveling. And thunder is much more of a limited thing than lightning. And I say this because thunder takes a concrete amount of time to reach us. Lightning travels at the speed of light, which is the fastest thing that science to date has found. So lightning just goes. Thunder takes its time. It travels at the speed of sound. The speed of sound is very fast, faster than I could run for sure. But it's not so fast. It's fast enough that there's a very noticeable delay between lightning and thunder, which is useful for making brachos and whatnot. But yeah, there's that delay that it happens between them. When we say a flash of thunder, well, the Frierdiker Rebbe is referencing, and this is something that I'm going to build up from Yiras Hashem, but what we're trying to say, or what the Frierdiker Rebbe is trying to say, perhaps, is lightning as it relates to thunder. That is to say that in the same way, much in the same way, that when you have an idea, the point of the idea is that you want to have an understanding of it. You want to have an appreciation of the idea. Because otherwise, what's the point of having the idea? But when we have the idea, as I mentioned before, very often, usually, if not always, the idea is just there. It's a lump in your mind. And you need to then spend more effort trying to take that idea and flesh it out in a way that you're able to understand it. when you think and think and think and think to try to understand something, to try to get an idea, you have the idea and it's not even available. It's not even something that you can appreciate. You need to put in more effort after that to take that idea and transform it into something that you can then appreciate. So, in the same way that lightning is really another aspect of thunder. It's just the first immediate aspect of thunder, that it's a flash, it's there, and then it's gone. And then a few seconds later, the thunder is able to hit you. In a very similar way, Chokhmah functions relative to Bina, which the Bechlal in that chapter in Eiv, it's also discussing Bina a little bit. It's discussing also the relationship between the two. So, you have a flash of thunder, and that's what Atzilus is in a sense, and that's, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, we'll just keep on going and I'll keep on referencing this concept in Mir Hashem. So you have the flash of intellect, but really the whole point of that flash is to be able to be brought down another level. So, the Frierdiker Rebbe says going deeper. With the fact that the whole existence of Chokhmah is only that it's not a non-existence. It's not a full existence. Which is to say that it is distant still from existence. But it's still distant. It's as distant. I don't know, as distant. I don't know that comparison could be necessarily given. But he says that similar to the way that it's distant from existence, it's distant from non-existence. Even though it's not properly in existence, in the same way that lightning is not properly, it's not something that you can appreciate, it's just a flash and then it's gone. But it's definitely something that exists. It's not something that exists because it didn't properly get into existence, but it's definitely not a non-existence. Lightning is there, it's a flash, you could question yourself if it even happened afterwards, because it doesn't leave any effect that you could see. I mean, maybe it'll strike a tree, but I'm saying from just an observer's position. It's there, and it's not. It's not a non-existence, but it's not quite in existence yet. Beriyah. Very, very shortly, Mr. Hashem, we're going to be bringing this back to the actual, how this all relates to Atzilus. But, Beriyah, the proof of this is, a very meta proof. From the point of intellect, from the point of view of intellect, it is not possible for us to understand the concept of a non-existence. There is no example that we can give for actual non-existence. The power of intellect is the source of intellect. It's not an existence of intellect. It's like an example for non-existence. The point of intellect is not an example for non-existence. It's an example for the beginning of existence. It's not a complete existence. So just to explain this, we say Koyach HaMaskal is the source, the ability to have ideas. It's the source of ideas, if you will. When we describe where ideas come from, we can't explain that there's a non-existence, because we can't use intellect to explain. I mean, we can explain it. I could say the idea over, but we can't properly describe non-existence. Intellect is not capable of comprehending the idea of something that doesn't exist. If we try to imagine, let's say, a universe without space, our minds just can't do that. It's not something that our brains are capable of doing. They're not programmed to be able to think about an absence of space. It exists in 3 dimensions, and that 3-dimensional limitation is something, it's so difficult to shake off. Maybe a person could add more dimensions in their thought process, or they could imagine a facsimile of 2-dimensional or 1-dimensional space. But to imagine a universe, a place of existence, not just a diminutive existence, an actual universe that doesn't have any space, maybe even to say 2 or 1 dimensions, that it's it still has space. We're just limiting the space that is there. But to have a place that has absolutely no space, that has no dimensions, is something the mind isn't properly able to comprehend. And much in a similar way, the idea of having non-existence, the idea of an existence of non-existence, it's a paradox in terms, but it's a paradox in existence. We can't phrase things without having existence. Everything that we talk about needs to have some level of existence. The best that we can do is we can call it a non-existence. We know the concept of existence, and we can express that we're trying to turn away from that concept of existence. But our minds aren't capable of thinking there's something that doesn't exist, and it does X, Y, and Z, or X, Y, and Z. But it does some of these things. Our minds aren't able to think in those terms. We're just not able to, because the concept of an idea is in existence already. It exists as an existence. There's a lot of meta terminology going on over here, but it's an existence. Ideas exist. And so there can't be an idea that expresses non-existence, because non-existence is too distant from an idea. If an idea were non-existent, then the idea would be able to reference itself, as that is the concept of a non-existence. But ideas aren't able to do that, because ideas have left the realm of non-existence. They exist. To whatever degree. Do they exist in a very fleshed out form? No. Are they tangible? Are they graspable? It's like a flash. It's a flash of lightning. You can't hold on to a flash of lightning. It exists to some very limited extent, but it's not a non-existence anymore. It does exist. So now that we have this very elaborate explanation of ideas that we build up, when I say ideas, I mean in the literal sense. Ideas about ideas. Now we can take this to Atzilus. Then we'll do a little bit of contrasting. Emiras Hashem. Then, if we have some time, we'll get Emiras Hashem to furthering the idea of the thunder and the lightning. But for now, let's just go towards the explanation, the moral of the story. But we say with this, we can understand the concept of the existence of Atzilus. We say Atzilus exists, but to what extent? With the fact that it is a revelation of the concealed. It's like lighting a candle from a candle. At the same token, it is not that non-existence that it comes to reveal. We said that it's true, that Atzilus is like a flame emanating from a coal. That you have the coal, and the coal contains the flame, and then the flame comes out of the coal. But Atzilus is not just, we took that same thing and we transformed it. No. It left being a non-existence. Before Atzilus is non-existence. Atzilus is now existence. It's not the non-existence that it's revealing. Like the flame which is revealed, which comes from the flame which is concealed. Atzilus comes in a way of striking. It's not in a way of touching. It's like taking a flame out of a flint instead of taking a flame out of a coal. It's like seeing something coming from a non-existence compared to something that's revealed. Because the 10 spheres of Atzilus are now the source of the worlds, and these worlds are in existence. And Atzilus is very directly their source, and as such, Atzilus now has an existence. Omnam Hamatzius Atzilus Eine Inyan Hamatzius Elosh Eine Lemitzius. The existence of Atzilus is not that it is in existence properly, but rather that it's not a non-existence. And that distinction from non-existence with the fact that it is the source for existence, it's not properly in existence. Atzilus, even though it exists to some extent, it's no longer a non-existence, but it's not properly in existence. And that is why the existence of Atzilus is called a reshima. It's called an imprint. Imprint is a phrase that comes up a lot in Chassidus. And Eretz Hashem, we'll have a little bit of an explanation right here, which is perfect. Like the concept of an imprint in working with an idea. Someone that's working with intellectual matters. With every intellectual thing, with every wisdom that a person works with, before the person starts to work with the idea, there's a general impression of the idea. What and what will be the working with this intellect. Like the way that an architect makes a blueprint before working on a house. You didn't have some kind of general idea what it is that you're setting out to do when you start working with ideas. With the fact that the idea, or not the idea, that the maskil, the person working with the idea, makes some kind of blueprint about how they're going to interact with the idea. The imprint of an idea is not the same as an imprint of an architect, even though we just said that there's a comparison. Both of them are an imprint. But what's the difference? When an architect makes a blueprint, the blueprint is trying to express something that already existed, that the architect had. This is what's in my mind's eye. This is my vision for the building. So I'm going to imprint that. Yes, it's going to help me work with the idea, but it's something that I'm taking, an idea that I already had in potential, at least the theoretical of what I want for this building, and I'm just putting it onto paper. But the essence of the idea is it's an expression of the idea that I had before. It's that I have my general vision for the house, and I'm imprinting this onto paper. This is not so with the imprint of an idea. The impression of what you're going to do with an idea changes the more that you work with the idea. The more that you delve into the depths of the idea, the more your impression of the idea is able to change. The more your general overview of the idea is able to change. Even though the original impression of what it is you're going to be thinking about when you set out to think about the idea, even though that's able to change, so this point itself, that you make an imprint of what it's going to be, what this idea is, even if the original imprint is nullified, but still it's a form that exists in the mind of what the idea is going to be. A little bit more just to bring this closer to Atzilus. We're almost done with the text of what we're going to be doing today. I know that's a little bit hard to halt cup, but in Eretz Hashem, it'll be good. I'll give a summary after Bli Neder. So in ideas you have many great lofty ideas. Like a very sharp person that has these very deep and sharp ideas. These ideas could be very far from practical. They could be very theoretical. And this is because the intellectual is only expressing the flow of intellect. It's really just imprints of ideas, nothing that has a practical reach. It's a revelation of the flow of wisdom. Very deep ideas, true, but distant from reality. That is why a person is able to have an idea which is contradictory in terms. A person can express, I don't want to start giving examples of ideas, we'll be stuck here all day, but a person can express a paradoxical idea. And the reason why a paradox is able to exist is because intellect exists untangled from reality. You're able to think about something even if it's not possible. You're able to discuss, the classic example throughout Torah is taking an elephant and passing it through the hole of the eye of a needle without the elephant changing shape and without the eye of the needle changing shape. Or size, I should say. without either of them changing size, an elephant passing through the eye of a needle. It's an absurd concept. It doesn't exist in reality. But we're able to think about this idea. We're able to give it a lot of parameters. We're able to discuss what level of impossible is this. Is it as impossible as a human jumping 50 feet? Theoretically, a human could jump 50 feet. Why not? But this is something that's impossible. It's a contradiction in terms. And we're able to give a lot of different expressions of this idea. But ultimately, it's disentangled from reality. And that's why we're able to have a complete paradox. Something and its opposite in it. When you have the idea, the impression of the idea, even if the idea will contradict what your original impression of the idea was, nevertheless, you move closer to actual reality. When you have the notion that what it is that I'm thinking about needs to interact with reality, you might have your first general impression of the idea, but then as you'll go forward, your impression of the idea will change as you go closer to reality, because ideas exist disentangled from reality, but the impression helps it be practical. The impression of this idea needs to have such and such a meaning in actual concrete terms means that even though you might be changing what your impression of the idea is, it's able to come down practically. This is a lot to take in. Just to finish off the last line, the example of this that we're able to understand from existence of Atzilus is only a reshim. Atzilus is only an imprint. It's not an existence at all. But it's not a non-existence. With the fact that it is an imprint, it is the source of all of the world. Now that everyone is sufficiently confused, I'll give a little bit of an explanation, and then a little bit of contrast, and then a little bit more explanation, and hopefully it won't take longer than 7 minutes, because I don't want to go too far over 50 minutes. So, Atzilus exists at the precipice. It exists at the lintel, at the doorstep. Atzilus is a revelation of what is concealed above. There is spirituality that exists above Atzilus, and Atzilus is a pure expression of that. Ultimately, though, Atzilus is so much more than that, because Atzilus is a practical existence. It's something that we are able to interact with in a meaningful way. We all, as people, we exist on every level. All of the higher worlds, etc., and all of the lower worlds, from Atzilus, Beriyah, Yetzirah, and Asiyah, and all of the infinite worlds that are above Atzilus. We exist in all of them. But interacting is not something that we could do above Atzilus. Because interacting above Atzilus, everything above Atzilus is non-existence. When we say a non-existence, we mean that it's something which is inaccessible for everything that we're made out of. Even though we exist there to some extent, and just to bring this down to a more practical example, when we have an idea, we don't know where the idea comes from. We know that wherever the idea comes from exists within our mind. It's not that there's some machine in outer space that's feeding ideas into our mind with lasers. The idea exists somewhere in our consciousness. It exists, there's this theoretical realm of all ideas that we can maybe pluck ideas out of. Whatever explanation you want to give for where ideas come from. It definitely is very shaykh to us. But at the same time, it's so not shaykh to us. It's so not relevant to us, or so not relatable to us. The reason being, if we'd be able to access it, we would then put it in the same category as Atzilus, and then we'd reach for whatever's higher than that. There is a point beyond which we are not able to reach. Atzilus is an expression of that. It is the first expression of that. It is the first point that we're able to say, we're able to take this, but really I know it's only revealing what was concealed. When we have an idea, it is truly our idea. It's something that we think about on our own. In the same way that Atzilus is related to everything that's above it. It's just that Atzilus is the first revelation, and the same way that an idea is the first revelation of whatever it is that goes on in the making of an idea, in the finding of an idea, in the existence of an idea, the idea is the first step. Same way that Atzilus is the first step. The thing is that ideas also they're finicky because they actually exist. But the thing is that the extent to which they exist is very overstated. thus far. Because even though compared to what is above it, the idea definitely exists, bringing it down, the idea doesn't exist in the same way. And the example that we gave for this was thunder and lightning. That when you have lightning is just a flash. It's a burst. It's something that it's there for a second and then it's not. Thunder is the rolling sound. It's something that it'll go and it'll travel at a very slow speed comparatively to lightning. Lightning is, as far as physics goes, it's virtually instantaneous. As instantaneous as something can be. Thunder is something that it just goes. When you have an idea, the idea is just, it pops into existence out of nowhere. We're not able to latch onto that. The only way that we're able to latch onto that is to say that you're going to flesh out that idea with an understanding. The pure form of an idea is something which is useless to us. It's something that we can't appreciate. The only way we can appreciate is with understanding, and then what we appreciate is the understanding. We appreciate the fleshed outness of the idea. So, on the one hand, the idea exists. On the other hand, the idea doesn't properly exist. And we say the same thing with Atzilus, that Atzilus is the source of everything that is below it. Everything that is below Atzilus is really an expression of Atzilus. But it's so much more. It's something that we're able to relate to. When we say Beriyah it's an existence. Something that Hashem created something from nothing. It's yesh mi'ayin. It's not just an existence. It's an idea. It's an existence in the sense of this is practical. Even though we're going to go on to explain that Beriyah is actually much more refined, much loftier than Yetzirah and Asiyah, but suddenly there's an actual existence. There's a me. There's an entity that is to be interacted with. There's something to be reckoned with. Atzilus is still an expression of everything that's above it. It's very pure. It's so pure, in fact, that it doesn't properly exist. And I think that we could really come to appreciate this by contrasting the two examples that we gave for Atzilus. The two, I would say, more general forms of examples. On the one hand, we said that Atzilus is lighting a fire from a fire. It's an expression of a flame from a coal, or it's taking one candle and touching it to another candle, which implies that Atzilus exists, and it continues existing. It's something from before, and nothing new was created. Then we have the very different example of a flint and steel that you strike it, and suddenly you have a completely new existence. And I think that this is maybe the thing that I would want to take away from this, is it really depends on which point of view you're looking from. When you're looking from the point of view from above to below, when you're looking from the point of view, let's say, Kaviyachol, of Hashem, you have all of the things that humans, that the world down here is not able to appreciate. Atzilus is really an expression of an expression of an expression of an expression, ad infinitum, ad nauseam, is just an expression of something that's above it. You're lighting one candle from the next to the next to the next to the next, the same flame being passed on, but it's going from level to level. So really, it's just an expression of what's there. It's not possible for there to be a non-existent. Hashem is the original existence. Things just get passed on until it reaches Atzilus. To that end, Atzilus was and always is an existence. Why is it that we say that what's above doesn't exist? When we say that we have an idea and it comes from a place of non-existence, why does it not exist? The reason why is because even though it does exist, it's there, we can't appreciate it. It's not something that clicks in our terms. Truly, there certainly can be some universe that's outside of ours, maybe which contains absolutely no space. Why is space a given? Space isn't a given. It's a limitation that we have. It's something that we can't see past. So to us, we're not able to appreciate non-existence. We're only able to appreciate existence, the new fad of this universe. What's above it, really, it's able to exist, or it's able to have some other terminology that you want to apply to it, whether it's existence or not. It's there, it's something, but we can't appreciate it. Atzilus is an expression of that, an expression of what's before it. But Atzilus is also something that's approachable for us. That's why it's the first existence. That's what makes it the first existence. The other example, the example of a flint and steel, seemingly you're taking something from nothing. I mean, that's what the example of flint and steel is, that you have a nothing and you drew out of something from that, somehow. When we look from our point of view, everything that's above Atzilus is a nothing. It doesn't exist. We're not able to appreciate it. We're not able to interact with it. Atzilus we are able to interact with. That being said, Atzilus is so high. It's the first, it's the absolute, it's the top of whatever we're able to interact with. We're not able to interact with it directly. It needs to have more expression before we're able to properly appreciate it. Because it's the top. When you interact with Atzilus, you appreciate that Atzilus, the upper end of Atzilus is really that it comes from that place of non-existence. It's something that's very hard to reckon with. So these two perspectives, when you contrast them, you're able to appreciate where Atzilus is caught. Atzilus is caught in the middle of non-existence and existence. Atzilus is caught as the expression of everything that's above it that we are not able to possibly appreciate it. At the same time, Atzilus is the ultimate of our universe, of our existence, because it's the top, it's the pinnacle of existence. It's the ultimate of existence. It's really caught in between those two. Now, really, we kind of alluded to this already, and we said that there's two names of Atzilus, Atzilus is one name, two meanings for the word Atzilus. Either it's Vayotzel min Ruach, that Hashem, it says Hashem took from Moshe Rabbeinu's nevuah, and like the example of taking one candle, lighting it from another, he removed from that spirit on Moshe, not removed, but he was matzil. He skimmed a little bit off the top, kind of. He lit one candle from the next. Atzilus is that chain. It's one to the next, to the next, to the next, of all of those things that we can't appreciate, until ultimately it comes to a place of appreciation. On the other hand, Atzilus is etzle. It's next to Hashem. When we look up, when we, physical beings, sheichni bati chemer, dwellers in houses of mud, we live in a very physical reality. When we look up at Atzilus and we say, the purest of spiritual things that we're able to appreciate as an existence, it's next to Hashem. It's next to whatever's above it. It's close to it. By virtue of its closeness to what's above it, we can't properly appreciate it until it comes down in a more fleshed out way. These two aspects of Atzilus are contained within Atzilus. They're both Atzilus. It's one and the same. It just depends on how you're looking at it. So that is Atzilus. Something that I think we can appreciate, maybe, something practical to take away from this. An expression of Asiyah from this past week, from Parshas Pinchas, but not to get too much into the things, we're already a little bit over where I'd like to be on time, is it's important to appreciate that two things could be true from different perspectives. Two, maybe even conflicting things could be true. Atzilus is both an existence and a non-existence, in its own way. As far as our point of view goes, yeah, we're claiming it as an existence. As far as what's above it goes, it can be claimed as a non-existence. It's definitely a pure expression of a non-existence. At the same time, it's neither one nor the other. It doesn't properly exist. It's a mere flash and then it's gone. On the other hand, it doesn't not exist because it's something that we can interact with. So it's very important to appreciate that everyone has a different perspective. There's a Gemara in Nazir. We just finished Sefer HaFlaw last week. There's a Gemara in Nazir that says that if people saw a person walking towards them and one person said, I am a Nazir if that person is a man, and the next one said, I am a Nazir if that person is a woman, and the next one said, I am a Nazir if that person is not a man, and the next one said, I am a Nazir if that person is not a woman, and that is a man and a woman, and that isn't a man and a woman, etc., etc. The Gemara says that if an androgynous, I'm not sure if this is an outdated term, a hermaphrodite, and whatever the term would be, but if that person is an androgynous, they're all chayav in Yetzirah, because each one has truth to their statement in its own way. Each one is correct. So it's important to appreciate that we as people have different perspectives, but maybe two different perspectives could be true at the same time. This could help us appreciate other people. Everyone is coming from somewhere. We should try to see the other perspective, and who knows, maybe it'll give us another good example for how we can understand Atzilus. As far as the thing that I kept on referencing about the lightning and the thunder, maybe for another time, maybe at the beginning of the next year, maybe as its own supplement to this. But yeah, Yetzirah to Hashem.